All right, good morning. Welcome to the Canvas Advanced webinar. Last week we covered kind of the basics of Canvas with tags, dragging and dropping or smart binding to text objects, as well as alarms and trends. So this week we'll cover a little more advanced material, such as identity and access management, data logging, audit logging, and scripting. So to begin, we're going to talk about identity and access management. This allows for security on your projects as well as HMIs. So I'm going to just immediately head over to Canvas and show a quick example of how to do this. So I just have a blank project here. If we go to Tools, Identity and Access Management, up here you can see we have users, groups, and permissions. Um, to start off, I'll just create a new group called Administrators. And inside this group, we can set a description, users, and permissions. So over here, I have created an example already, but I'll create a new permission called navigate, which if we set this description, we can navigate between pages. So any description that you have here will explain how to use the permissions themselves. So if we go back to the group name or the group itself, we can double click and we can assign permissions right here. You can select all of them or individually. So we will just select navigate and hit OK. So I'm going to create a new user just by the name of Simon with an email of simon@simoninc.com. As well, you can set a user password, and for, I guess, easiness of this project, I'll just create it as Simon. So to make sure that those are the same. Cool. All right. Over in administrators, I will add a new user, and I will add that new user, that Simon, that I just created. And I will go over more about the log on and log off actions. However, if you click them, you can run a new script or a new command, the same way that you can interact with tags on objects themselves. So we have this new Simon administrator in this group who can use the permission of navigate. So if we have a new page, we can actually create a new tag and set this to log on. And I will just set this value to be false. And I want to actually monitor that tag itself right here on this text object. So when we run the simulator, you can see that this should be 0 right there. Now I'm going to create a new momentary button. I'm going to drag that log on Boolean tag to that button. And when we create a new page over here, this page itself is only going to be for display. We can set this text to admin only. So if you're an admin, you should be able to see just this text. On this old page, we can have it open page, and open new page too. And down here under the actions, we have permissions. And if you have the navigate permission, you'll be able to actually press this button and head over to that new page that we created. So I will demonstrate that here. Since I do not have any permissions as a non-logged in user, you can see the error message that the user has an insufficient permission. So we can create a login button just by drawing a basic text object or a basic square object. And then on press, create new command, we can open login window and hit OK. So now, if we press this button, this login window should appear. We can type in that user that I created just with Simon, and we can hit OK and press that button. And now we have navigated to the admin only page. One more thing I would like to demonstrate is just a quick navigation button here to open that previous page. page. And I can demonstrate the identity and access management log in, log out. So if this user logs in on a log on action, we can create a new command and we can toggle that tag value that I created right here with log on. So when we do that, this value here is 0, but I will log in, navigate to that page, admin only, and we navigate back and should see that this value is now 1. To change it to 0, we can set the log out option to the same thing. One thing that we do need to create is a log out option. So I'll do that just by creating another box there, and then we would do log out user. So this tag value here is 0. We'll log in. We can see that it is 1. And when we press it, we are logged out. And now the value is 0 again. And we should not be able to navigate to that page. So that is the basics of identity and access management. You can create multiple permissions, multiple groups, and multiple users and assign them to groups. As well, you can also assign individual users permissions. So we can do that here. And if they are no longer a part of that administrator's group, they should still be able to navigate with this button since the permission is set over here. Additionally, we can set multiple objects to have different sets of permissions. As you can see, since I only have one, it's only demonstrated with one. But if I make a new permission right here, that's just called new permission, it will show up here. So that covers identity access management, which kind of leads us into data logging. So data logging will show any changes between tags or values related to that. And to do that, we can go to the data log editor under tools, and we can hit the plus button up here. This creates a new model on how we can model our data that is logged. So we can name it up right here, name it new model. The max amount of logs can be set. So default is 1000, and we can set the timestamp for logging as well. If we want to have it begin at startup, manual, or condition, those are possible. So manual would be calling it to data log manually, or condition would be having the data log itself on a condition. As well as the logging options, we have periodic if a tag value changes, another condition is met, or we can manually log data. So by default, it is set to 100 milliseconds, but I will log data every 5 seconds instead for this example, and I'll set it to 0 milliseconds. And we have the option of CSV logging. We have 5 different storage types. You can save it locally to the HMI. You can save it to a USB, SD card, via FTP, or the project itself. So that is possible. For this example, I will also disable that. And over here, we can do a new data log option. Like that. And then I'm going to just draw a basic switch lamp, throw that log on tag to it. New command, toggle tag value. We'll toggle that on off for the log on option. So on the data log itself, we actually have to assign it that new model. So if you click the data log and go to data logger model, you have to select the new data log model. This will also allow you here to set the time format, and we have all of these available time formats. And then last thing is you must drag in, or you must add the tag itself to the data logger. And to do that, uh, sorry about that. To do that, you actually have to go to the tag list and add the tag right here. So any tag that we create can be logged on the data log itself. And I'll show another example of this. But here under new model in the data log editor, we have to go to tag list and add the tag. So I will do one more tag, for example, and I will just call it value. I will set that value to an integer with an initial value of 0. And then one more time, we can go to tools, data log editor, tag lists, or click the new model, tag list, and then we can add that value tag. And then this switch lamp again will control that Boolean tag. And then I will create a new numeric field object right here that we can do enter tag value. And we can change the tag to value. Okay. So since nothing is happening with the tags, they are appearing as 0 and 0. And again, it's logging every 5 seconds. But if we switch it on, the next log should show that this value is 1. We go over here. We can set this value to 50. And on the next log, value should be 50. There you go. So both of them will be 1 and 50. We turn it off. This value is now 0. This one's 50. Anything that you change it to will log based on the amount of logging time. So we can have 1,000 max logs, since that's what we set in the max log option, and it will log every 5 seconds. And then if we wanted to export as a CSV, that will be an option that appears over here, but we did not include it in this example, so we cannot save it as a CSV at the moment. And then that brings me into the next feature, which is the audit log. This allows us to be compliant with the FDA 21 CFR Part 11. So to enable audit logging, if we go over to project properties and scroll down from the top, if we scroll down to audit log, we can just set that value to enable. So by default, it is set to false. But if we enable it, we just hit true. And then you can change its database type to Maria database, MySQL, PostgreSQL, or SQLite. To draw an audit log, all we have to do is insert an audit log right here. And you can see that it will monitor time, the description, target value, and the user. So this allows for users to be tracked when they make any changes to tags. If we go to tools, nothing will show up because we don't need to. If we just run the simulator, we can see that nothing has changed in value. If we hit search, we can see we started this project today. But if we change the value to true, we can see that this has changed to true and has logged in the audit log. If we change it to false, same thing. The value tag itself, it will also log. So if we log in as a user, we can see the user itself pop up. So I will do that by opening a new login window. We do Simon. We are now logged in, so we can see login attempt, is CIMON, the user itself, and the value is true, meaning that we are in fact logged in. So log on is true as well. We change value here to 50. We can see that CIMON has logged on, change that value to true, as well as change the value tag to 50. So that's kind of the powerful tool of audit logging that we offer in Canvas. The next thing is scripting. So Canvas is built on JavaScript ES5. So we have many different options that we provide with Canvas. Up to 100 scripts can run at one time, so that is important to remember. If you use nested while loops, however, that will slow your HMI as well. So to create a new script, all you have to do is just go to the script editor and press this plus button to create a new script. So I can just name this example script, and then we can change the running type from manual, periodic, or startup. So the script on startup of the project will run. Periodic will run every milliseconds. So every 1000 milliseconds or 1 second, it should run. And then manual, you have to call this script to actually have it run. So I'm just going to leave this example script on manual. And I'm going to create a basic while true. So in this loop, or this while loop will run forever. And we offer custom commands. So we have a tag.read and a tag.write. So I'm just going to do a tag.write to value. And I'm going to do tag.read value and +1. Under that, I will do a thread. We have millisecond sleep or sleep. So I'm just going to do a millisecond sleep of 1. And that is our example script. So what this should do is if I create a new text object here and I put value on this, this will read the value. But since I made a manual script, I'm going to make a new drawing object. I'm going to do on press, and then our new script shows right there. So when we run this in the simulator, nothing changes. But once I press this, every 1 millisecond, you can see that the value tag itself changes. And since I put that in a while true loop, it will never end, but we can just stop that by having a different condition in the while loop. So the next part of scripting is kind of understanding what we offer with the scripts. And to do that, we have our basic while loop, which was the thing the example that I used. So what it does is it reads a condition right here, for example, while tag.read tag2 is 0, run the information inside the while loop. So this will decrement x, so x equals x minus 1 up until tag2 equals 0. The next type of loop is a do while loop. So up here, for example, this will do everything inside of the loop and then read the condition. So they're pretty similar. However, they function just a little bit differently. If-else statements are a good way to check conditions inside of scripting. You can have if x equals 0. So this means if x is 0, then we can set y equal to x plus 1. Whatever the value of x is equal 1 more. Else if we can do if x equals 1, then y equals x times 2. Else y equals x modulus operator, which is the percentage sign, mod 2. And that value can be written to tag 2 as such. The last kind of loop is a for loop. So this will run until a condition is met. So for example, right here, x equals 10, which is the same thing as this. So for 10, x is greater than or equal to 0, decrease x. That is what this is saying. So while x is greater than or equal to 0, decrease x after each iteration. So for example, x is 10 right here. We're going to increase y, sleep for 500 milliseconds, write to tag 1, write to tag 2, and decrease x. X is now 9. X is still greater than or equal to 0, and continue. Those are how for loops work. Switch case is very similar to an if-else statement. If you have the condition switch in here, it is the same as if x equals 0, run this case. If x is equal to 1, run this case. Otherwise, default to writing this value right here. Switch cases are a neater way of cleaning up if else cases if scripting becomes too bogged down in if else statements. So again, switch cases are kind of a neater way of cleaning that up. You can also create user-defined functions. So this is saying function with the name of my function that take in parameters A and B. Inside that, you can do C equals A from this parameter plus B from this parameter. And in the end, you can return C, which means just return the value that you get here. To call that, you can do tag.write, tag3, for example, and call my function. So this will just return the value of C. So you're writing whatever C is in my function. Try catches are a good way of avoiding error or having your program fully fault due to some kind of error in your scripting. So it will always do a try, and then if any error is found, it will catch that error and throw a message. So for example, tag 5 here doesn't exist since you can see right here in the validator, it is listed as variable tag 5 is undefined. Instead of completely closing your script and your program, it will just pop this new error at the bottom of your HMI that says this is an error message right here. So you can customize this as long as you are throwing an error. We have other scripting functions, like I mentioned, built into Canvas, such as notification.send. That's the same type of notification that you saw on that last screen right here. You can just send that directly without it having to be an error. Thread.sleep, thread.msleep, which is for milliseconds. System.exit, this will exit runtime project as listed here. System.import script, this allows you to import scripts across your project, and then you can actually run another script through a script by doing system.runscript. And I want to mention that here on the Canvas online help file, under appendix and command and script functions, we include a list of all of our custom scripts that we allow in Canvas. And the list is pretty extensive, as well as a demonstration for each one and a description. So the next thing I want to do is probably the most important part of an HMI is being able to interface with a PLC. And I've created just a small example here that will always do an incrementing value for our data register D0. So this example will be used in Canvas. But to create a new script, or not new script, to interface with a CIMON PLC, for example, all we have to do is go to this icon here, the IO device editor, or we can go to tools and we can go to IO device editor. We have serial communication as well as Ethernet communication. If we create a new Ethernet device, we can name it PLCS since we are using a CIMON PLC for this example. If you're not, you can also take a look at the device type, and we communicate with Ethernet IP for Allen Bradley's or ODVAs, Fatec, LSIS, Mitsubishi, etc. All down here. Before I create that, I will also show our serial protocols right here. We do support Modbus RTU and TCP. As you can see, Modbus TCP there. So any device that we do not list here, if it can communicate with Modbus TCP, should be able to communicate with our HMIs. But I'm going to create a new PLC S device name, and the configuration for Ethernet communication will pop up here. I know the IP of the PLC is 192.168.1.232. I want to just double check that under the PLC parameter 234. So that would not work. If I change this to 234, we will now communicate with our PLC that I have. You can select the type of TCP or UDP. So for this example, I'm just going to use TCP and hit OK. So this will allow us to now communicate with the PLC. And to show that program that's running, I'm going to just create a new text object, edit our value tag, and now our new Ethernet device will show up under IO device. I'm going to select PLC, change our IO data register to D0, since in the project right here, I am wanting to target this data register D0. And I'm just going to select OK. To use the simulator with a field device such as a PLC, you must use the online simulator. So if I open just the default simulator, it's going to say new text. I have to drag that value onto it. It should say 0 now, since we are just using the offline simulator. However, if we open the online simulator or press F6, we can see that that D0 data register is increasing every scan. And since we are using an int tag for this, it's going to overflow. However, I am using the instruction to increase using dwords. So I'm going to change this int value to dint, rerun the online simulator, and we are now in the millions. So that's kind of the basics of communication with devices in Canvas. Pretty simple. The next thing we have is the event scheduler, and it's kind of what the name implies. Every event can happen in the scheduler. So if we go to Tools, Schedule Editor, we can create a new schedule. We could call this, empty water. If you're using some kind of water treatment, for example, every 24 hours is when this will go, when this happens. So we can start this on an AM or PM or 24-hour clock. If we want to start it tomorrow, that's possible. We can repeat every 1 day, hour, weeks, months, years, or you can change this to 2, 20, doesn't matter. Uh, the 15th of the month, for example, this just means when do we want this to go off? We can have it go off on the 15th since that was what was selected. But additionally, you can have it go off every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And then a new action, we can have it interface with a new command or a new script, and that will have your schedule happen. So scheduling is pretty simple and self-explanatory. Canvas also supports the ability to send emails or text messages using SMTP. And to do that, all we have to do is go to Project Properties and scroll down to SMTP right here. You need the server name as well as a username and password, and then sender, you can change the sender name to the email or phone number based on the provider that is used to send a text message. So that is pretty powerful. We also support SSL or TLS encryption over SMTP. As well as the possibility of alarms, which were mentioned last week. You can include email notifications. So if you are on this list and something goes wrong or an alarm is triggered, you can actually get an email from your own project, which is pretty powerful. And the last thing that I'm going to go over today is the multi-language feature or the string table. This allows for translation of different languages or any kind of basic translation that you'd like to include in a project. So for example, I'm going to just create a new tag that is called text value. I'm going to change it to a string type. Its initial value will just be hello. And then I'm going to create 3 text objects and label them with some languages. So we have English. We can include Spanish, as well as Italian. And right here, I will include that new text value of hello. So when I run the simulator, you should see English, Spanish, Italian, and hello since it is reading this text value tag. Over in the tools and string table editor, I'm going to, you can call this new group, you can call it language translation. It's whatever you decide to name it. We can add a new key. This creates an entirely new row, and we can add a new language. So in that language, I will type English, Spanish, and Italian. So anytime you change the key here to hello, an English translation will pop up with hi. A Spanish translation will pop up with hola, and the Italian translation will pop up with ciao. And you can continue adding languages and keys. But for this example, we would just use those three. So I'm going to turn these into actual push objects. So on press, we're going to create a new command, and we are going to set translation language. This will change it to English. This one here will do the same thing and change it to Spanish. And then same thing over here and change this to Italian. So that hello tag here, we need to do one more thing. We change the binding properties to multi-language string and group translation since we changed that to language translation. Again, to do that, all we have to do is drag and drop this tag here, click the chain link icon, expression, multi-language string. I am not sure why that this example is not working at the moment. I just tested this. Let me troubleshoot it. Okay, so that seems to be the issue. So if we actually change this to string table and change the group again back to language translation, we are going to go off of row 0, which was that row that we have right here, row 0. And if we select English, now we see that hi shows up, Spanish hola shows up, and Italian ciao will show up. So that is kind of the basics of the string table. It's a lot more powerful than this example shows since I was having some troubleshooting issues. But you can see that that tag that just says hello will translate based on whatever we set the translation languages to. So under, again, string table editor, we have English, Spanish, Italian, and that initial value of the tag right here set to hello is what the key itself is. So that's kind of the basics. This example here in the PowerPoint itself will show that it's a little bit easier to digest. But that is kind of the end of this presentation. Again, I thank you all so much for joining me. If you have any questions, I will stay in the webinar just for a few more minutes and answer any questions. Thank you.